Picture crossing the finish line of a 1,500-meter race. Not jogging it, racing it. At a pace that would have broken world records just 2 decades ago. Your lungs feel like they are full of broken glass. Your legs have turned to cement. And every signal your brain can produce is screaming one single word. Stop. Now imagine finishing all of that and looking like you just stepped off an elevator. That is Jakob Ingebrigtsen. And before we go any further, I need you to hold on to one question. Because this question is going to follow you through the next 9 minutes. Everyone assumes that what separates Jakob from the rest of the world is some rare genetic gift. A bigger heart. Lungs built differently. Something you are either born with or you are not. And here is what I am going to show you today. The real answer is almost the opposite of that. What makes Jakob untouchable is not that his body can do more than yours. It is that his body is systematically protected from doing too much. Stay with me, because that distinction is going to change the way you think about elite performance entirely. To understand Jakob, we have to go back, way back. Because the story of how endurance training became a science is, first and foremost, a story about pain. 1948, the London Olympics. A Czech soldier named Emil Zatopek lines up for the 10,000 meters. His running style makes coaches physically uncomfortable. His head rolls from side to side. His face contorts like he is fighting something invisible. British journalists call him the Beast. Other runners refuse to train near him because watching him hurts to look at. He wins by 75 meters. But here is what almost nobody talks about when they tell the Zatopek story. Emil was the first man in history to truly weaponize interval training. Long before any lab had measured a single molecule of lactate in a running athlete, Zatopek was out in the Czech forests doing 40 repetitions of 400 meters in a single session. 40. In army boots, sometimes in the snow. He ran until he vomited, called that a good session, and came back the next day. The problem was simple. He had absolutely no idea what he was doing to his own body. He trained by feel, by suffering, by the idea that more pain always equals more gain. And it worked, until it did not. Now, fast forward to the 1990s. Norway. A young medical student named Marius Bakken becomes obsessed with a problem that the running world has never taken seriously enough. Not how hard to train, but how to know, with real precision, exactly where the biological line is between adaptation and destruction. So he does something that, depending on your perspective, is either completely brilliant or completely insane. He starts stabbing his own fingers. Thousands of times. Over years. After every single training run, after every interval, after every easy jog, Marius draws blood from his fingertip and measures the lactate concentration in his own body. He becomes his own laboratory. He builds a database of himself, and maps with obsessive detail exactly what is happening inside his muscles at every possible training intensity. What he discovers becomes the foundation of what we now call the Norwegian Method. And Jakob Ingebrigtsen is not the inventor of that system. He is version 2.0 of it. The fully optimized second-generation product of an experiment that started with one man alone in a room, bleeding into test strips. Now I need you to pay close attention here, because this is the engine room. There is a concept in exercise physiology called the lactate threshold, and almost everyone gets it wrong. Lactate is not the enemy. For decades we called it lactic acid and blamed it for the burning in your legs during hard effort. That was wrong. Lactate is actually a fuel, a molecule your body produces during intense exercise and can use for energy, provided it clears it fast enough. Here is the way I explain it to every athlete I work with. Picture a kitchen sink. The tap is running. The tap is your lactate production. The harder you exercise, the more water flows. The drain is your body's ability to clear that lactate. your liver, your heart muscle, your slow twitch fibers, all consuming it and converting it back into usable energy. At easy efforts, the drain keeps up easily. The sink never fills. At moderate efforts, there is slight pooling, but your body manages it. Then there is a specific measurable intensity called your lactate threshold, where production starts to outpace clearance. The water begins to rise. And once that sink overflows, your muscles lock. The burning becomes unbearable. And that is when Jakob's competitors grab their knees at the finish line. And here is what makes Jakob different from every other athlete on the planet. He does not train at the overflow point. He trains right at the edge of the drain, right at the exact intensity where lactate production and clearance are almost perfectly balanced. And he does this twice a day. 2 threshold sessions every single day. What physiologists call the double threshold method. Think about what that requires. Not just physically, cognitively. You have to know your own body with a precision most humans never develop in a lifetime. You need external feedback, a lactate measurement, a number, because at threshold pace you feel like you could go harder. That feeling is a lie. And Jakob has been trained since childhood to ignore that lie. The consequence of doing this over years and years is extraordinary. His ability to process lactate at high speeds accelerates far beyond what normal training produces. His body essentially gets better and better at keeping that sink from overflowing at speeds that would flood anyone else. And the weekly training volume he sustains while doing all of this? Around 180 kilometers. Every week, with an injury rate that, compared to elite runners training at higher intensities, is almost statistically impossible. Which brings me to the question I know is already in your head right now. How is he not broken? I am a physical therapist. This is my area, and I want to be very direct about something. The Norwegian Method is not just a performance system. It is an injury prevention system hiding inside a performance system. When athletes train hard above their lactate threshold regularly, they flood their connective tissue with inflammation and repeatedly hammer their fast-twitch muscle fibers at the exact zone where damage accumulates fastest. Think of fast-twitch fibers like a sports car engine. Incredible power. But run it at full throttle every single day, and it destroys itself. Stress fractures, Achilles problems, shin injuries. These are exactly what I see in runners who try to copy Jakob's weekly volume without understanding that his system is specifically designed to keep that engine away from the red zone almost all of the time. Jakob runs 180 kilometers per week, but the vast majority of that distance is at intensities that do not significantly challenge his fast-twitch fibers. His connective tissue has had years to adapt progressively. And his tendons, this is the biomechanical detail most people miss completely, are extraordinarily stiff. Not stiff in a bad way. Stiff in the way a spring is stiff. In elite runners, tendon stiffness is the ultimate predictor of running economy. Put simply, it is how much oxygen your body burns at a given speed. Stiff tendons store energy on each foot strike and return it on the next stride, almost for free. Jakob's Achilles tendon and plantar fascia function as energy return mechanisms that would not look out of place in an engineering laboratory. At 20 kilometers per hour, Jakob burns less oxygen than an average recreational runner burns at 12. That is not just a lung story, that is a mechanic story. His foot strikes the ground in almost perfect midfoot contact, directly beneath his center of mass, minimizing the braking force that heel striking creates and maximizing that spring return. He is not defying physics. He has simply spent his entire career optimizing his relationship with it. Here is where things get genuinely uncomfortable for the sport. Non-invasive lactate monitoring devices are emerging right now. Wearable sensors that measure lactate in real time, no blood, no finger prick, worn during actual competition. World athletics is already in early discussions about whether this crosses a line. And there is no clean answer yet. But here is what that debate actually reveals. The Norwegian Method is not just a system for the 1500 meters. It is a universal framework for any endurance discipline where managing internal load is the difference between winning and breaking down. Which is exactly why the most natural next question is this: could this system work for the marathon? The answer is that Jakob's aerobic base is arguably already marathon ready. The method he trains with was not built for one distance. It was built for one principle: never let the body do more than it can recover from. That principle does not care about the distance on the sign. Here is what I want you to walk away with after all of this. The Norwegian Method 2.0 is not a training plan. It is a philosophy of biological respect. It is the idea, radical in a sport built entirely on glorifying suffering, that the most elite athlete is not the one who tolerates the most pain. It is the one who knows with the most precision exactly where pain begins. Emil Zatopek ran until he vomited and called it instinct. Marius Bakken bled into test strips alone in his apartment and turned it into science. Jakob Ingebrigtsen was born into that science, refined by it from childhood, and is now rewriting what a human being can sustain at speed. He almost certainly has a genetic profile that most athletes will never have. His body responds to training in ways that are not normal. But here's the thing: that genetic potential has existed in other runners before him, and those runners broke. What makes Jakob different is not that his genetics are superior. It is that his system never let those genetics go to waste. He is the product of a method that treats the human body not as something to push to its limit, but as something to protect right up to it. That is the real answer. And yes, I promised you it was not what you expected.
Now I want to hear from you. If you had to choose just one, would you rather have Jakob's lungs or his recovery capacity? The engine or the pit crew? Drop your answer in the comments right now. I read every single one. And if this video made you think, I have a feeling the next one is going to hit even harder. I just published a full breakdown of Eliud Kipchoge, titled "The Real Reason Kipchoge Never Gets Injured." 22 years of elite competition data. Why his VO2 max has not collapsed with age. How his recovery system has kept him racing at the top longer than any marathoner in history. And what his body reveals about endurance that no one else is talking about. It is linked right here. Go watch it next. I am Sebastian from the Injury Breakdown. See you in the next one.